Shalom, this is the next in our series of videos offering guidance, and we hope a little inspiration for your Passover Seder for this unique year. And we come now to the stage of the Seder known as Yahatz, which is breaking of a piece of matzah. We've done Kadesh, the Kiddush, blessing over wine and grape juice. At the beginning of the Seder, we've done Orchatz, the first of two ceremonial hand washings. We've done Karpas, we've eaten a vegetable dipped in salt water, and now we come to Yahatz, the breaking of a piece of matzah. This is the last ritual before Magid, before the heart of the Seder, of telling the story of Passover. And it's customary for the leader to have three ceremonial pieces of matzah in front of him or her. That's all the matzah that you need to have at your Seder, but of course if you have more people at your Seder, you may want to have more matzahs available for everybody to be able to have the requisite amount during the course of the Seder. But the leader should have three matzahs in front of him or her. The three matzahs symbolize any number of different things. Often they're interpreted as being the three categories of Jewish people: the Kohanim, the priests, the Levi'im, the Levites, and the Israelim, the Israelites. And so we break the middle matzah, which is the Levi matzah, the Levite matzah, because symbolism. And so the ritual is very simple. There's no blessing. You just take among your three pieces of matzah, your three whole loaves of matzah, as it were, the middle piece, and you break it into two. You try not to break it into even pieces, but rather into a larger piece and a smaller piece. There's even a tradition of trying to break them into two-letter dalids, which you can do if you kind of do it jagged, but of course that is very tricky to do. But I'm going to try just to make sure that we get a smaller piece and a larger piece. And here we go. I have a smaller piece and a larger piece. The smaller piece goes back with the other ceremonial matzahs, where we will eat them later in the Seder. And the larger piece goes in a napkin or a bag or a cloth or something, and gets reserved for later in the Seder. This is known as the afikomen. And according to tradition, we can't finish the Seder until we eat the afikomen. So it's customary in a lot of households for children to hunt for and then hold the afikomen for ransom, so that the grown-ups can finish the Seder. If you're blessed to have children with you at the Seder, you can certainly have them do that. Make sure to have good prizes for them. If you don't have children at your Seder, you can enjoy it as a game among adults. If you are observing Seder by yourself, see if you can trick yourself into finding it, and give yourself a prize, give yourself a reward for finding the afikomen. There's no shame in that. And so we reserve the afikomen for later. In my book, 30 Days of Liberation, I talk about why it is that we break a piece of matzah at the beginning of the Seder, and then we reserve the other half of it for the end of the Seder. And I say, toward the beginning of the Seder, we break a ceremonial piece of matzah and hide the larger portion, which we eat at the end of the meal. As we gather at the Seder table, we acknowledge the brokenness of our world as it is. This is a world, after all, that tolerated the slavery of the ancient Israelites, not to mention countless other instances of unspeakable persecution and abuse perpetrated against innumerable different peoples in myriad places throughout history, and continues to abide heinous oppression and cruelty. But as we move through the Seder's rituals and narrative, we are reminded that subjugation can be ended, oppressors toppled, and new orders established. The broken can be made whole. That's why we're not allowed to finish the Seder without finding and eating the afikomen. Ultimate redemption is possible if we want it, if we seek it, and if we hold fast to it. We cannot consider our work done at the Seder or in our world until we put the shattered pieces back together. And I think that there's also another reason why we start the Seder with a broken piece of matzah. We fulfill our obligation to eat matzah with a broken loaf. And that's because before we tell of our bondage and our freedom on Passover Eve, we break a piece of matzah. We eat broken bread to experience poverty. In the past, only the wealthy could afford whole loaves. The poor ate pieces. If we approach suffering and injustice as mere concepts, we will never do what is necessary to alleviate them. When we experience what it is like to be oppressed, we will see how intolerable it is and what needs to be fixed, and move swiftly to end injustices of any kind. And so as you break the matzah at the beginning of your Seder, I invite you to experience the injustice and the oppression and the poverty of eating that broken loaf. And also remember that it is an inspiration and a challenge to ensure that anything that is broken in our world, that we have an obligation and an opportunity this Passover and in the days that come after to make it whole. Shalom.